السابقون الأولون من المهاجرين والأنصار والذين اتبعوهم بإحسان.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا، من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we were in the 4th chapter, خصائص المنهج السلفي, some of the particular aspects of the Salafi methodology. And I believe we started this section, the first point from those aspects of the Salafi methodology, الدعوة إلى التوحيد وتحقيق الإخلاص لله عز وجل، وهذا من أعظم خصائص المنهج السلفي. والذي تميز به عن غيره من المناهج ومسالك الفرق الأخرى. The first particular and specific aspect of the Salafi methodology is the call to Tawheed. The call to Tawheed and to sincerity. And this is from the greatest of the defining aspects of the Salafi methodology. And it is something that distinguishes Salafiyah from all other methodologies, from all other practices that the Muslims may have and ways that they have. This is one of the aspects, the greatest aspect that distinguishes Salafiyah from all other ways. And we mentioned that before. If you think back to how the revelation began, the first 13 years when the Prophet ﷺ was in Mecca, those 13 years, the da'wah, the revelation that was coming to him was all on the aspect of Tawheed. If you check the Quran, the surahs that were revealed in Mecca, they are all about Tawheed. And then the ones that were revealed in Medina have the other issues in them, the prayer, the zakat, the hajj, etc. So the beginning of the da'wah, it was all focused on Tawheed. 13 years in Mecca, and the revelation coming was all on Tawheed, not on the zakat and the hajj and the divorce and other issues that were revealed in the ayat later on after the hijrah. That shows how much focus is given to the aspect of Tawheed. That is the first one. فالله عز وجل ما خلق الخلق إلا لتحقيق ذلك. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not create mankind except to actualize that purpose, the purpose of worshipping Him upon Tawheed. And that is what will differentiate the people on the Day of Judgment. The muwahhidun will enter paradise, and the mushrikun will enter hellfire. The people of Tawheed will be successful, the people of shirk will be the unsuccessful. So that is the first aspect that defines the Salafi methodology. وما أرسل الرسل عليهم السلام من نوح عليه السلام إلى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم إلا لدعوة الناس إليه وما أوجد الجنة والنار إلا جزاء لمن وحد وأشرك. And Allah didn't send all of the prophets and messengers, from the first of them Nuh alayhi salam to the last of them Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. They were not sent except to call the people to this Tawheed. That was their objective and the core of their call. And paradise and hell were not created except to be a recompense for the people upon whether they practice Tawheed or the opposite, shirk. So that is the first defining aspect of the Salafi methodology. The second defining aspect that distinguishes Salafiyyah from all other methodologies is التجرد في الاتباع للنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم والرد عند التنازع إلى سنته بعد كتاب الله دون سواه من الخلق. The second defining aspect of the Salafi methodology is the pure and unadulterated following of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and returning the affairs back to him when disputes occur after the Book of Allah. So, point one was sincerity to Allah. Point two is the following of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in that pure manner. We follow him and his sunnah completely and perfectly and purely, not with any additions or innovations or any other aspect coming into it, but pure following of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and returning our affairs back to him, back to the Quran, back to the Sunnah. When disputes occur, any difference occurs, returning it back to the Quran and the Sunnah. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, يا أيها الذين آمنوا أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول وأولي الأمر منكم فإن تنازعتم في شيء فردوه إلى الله والرسول إن كنتم تؤمنون بالله واليوم الآخر ذلك خير وأحسن تأويلا. In Surah An-Nisa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that, O you who believe, obey Allah and obey those and obey the messenger and obey those in authority over you. Obey Allah, obey the messenger, and obey those in authority over you. Obey Allah, that is clear. Follow the commandments and stay away from the prohibitions. Obey what is in the Quran and obey the messenger, that is clear. Follow the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وَأُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْكُمْ, and those in authority over you. Then that can be two. Two types of people are in authority over you. One is the rulers. The Muslim rulers are in authority over you, so obey the rulers. And secondly, as the scholars have mentioned, the second meaning of this ayah, the ulil amr, is also the scholars, the people of knowledge, to obey or to follow that guidance from them, from the people of knowledge, as Allah told us in the Quran to do so. فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of remembrance, meaning the people of knowledge, al-ulama, if you do not know. So returning back to the scholars, the people of knowledge, those whom Allah has told us to return back to, then that is something which we implement and practice as part of our understanding and methodology. We obey what is in the Quran, what is in the Sunnah, and we return back to the scholars, return back to the people of knowledge. ذلك خير وأحسن تأويلا. That is better. ذلك خير. That is better. That is the best. وأحسن تأويلا. And that is the best way of it and the best interpretation. And in another ayah, just after that, Allah said, فَلَا وَرَبِّكَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ حَتَّى يُحَكِّمُوكَ فِيمَا شَجَرَ بَيْنَهُمْ ثُمَّ لَا يَجِدُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَرَجًا مِمَّا قَضَيْتَ وَيُسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا. That by your Lord, they do not truly believe until they make you the judge in the affairs that they dispute over. Meaning the messenger, until they make you, O messenger, the judge in the affairs that they dispute over. Meaning now that we make the Quran and the Sunnah the judge, that we return back to the evidences to make the judgment in an affair where there may be a dispute. And then once that judgment comes, لا يجدوا في أنفسهم حرجا مما قضيت, that they do not find any hesitancy, any reluctance in their hearts once you make the judgment. Once that judgment comes from the Quran and the Sunnah, then there is no reluctance or hesitancy that you should experience in that ruling. That is the ruling of the religion, so you abide by the ruling of the religion. And there are narrations about this. Shaykh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab rahimahullah ta'ala mentioned some in Kitab al-Tawheed, mentioning the example of when a munafiq had a disagreement with a Jew. The munafiq, pretending to be a Muslim, a hypocrite, had the disagreement and argument with a Jew. And so they said, let us go and find someone to judge between us. The Jewish man said, let's go to your Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He will judge between us. We'll tell him what happened between us. He can judge. Because the Jews, they knew that the Prophet ﷺ is a just man and does not take bribes, whereas the Jews themselves would take bribes and give the false ruling, give the rights to the one who does not have the rights. So the Jew didn't want to go back to the Jews knowing that they could be bribed. He said to the munafiq, the one who was supposed to be a Muslim as far as the Jews saw, he said to him, we'll go back to your Prophet Muhammad to make the judgment. Because he knew the Prophet Muhammad was a just man and would not take bribes. He would give the exact ruling. And if the Jew had the right, the messenger would say, it's your right. The munafiq didn't want to do that. He wanted to go elsewhere. He did not want to go back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this indicates that the judgment is made upon the Quran and the Sunnah, returning back to those evidences. And once that knowledge comes to you, once that judgment comes to you, then you accept that and do not fight over it and do not try to substantiate your position against the correct ruling, against what is clear and apparent, against what the scholars have clarified and highlighted. Accept the error can be made and retract. As the scholars they say, الرجوع إلى الحق فضيلة. Returning back to the truth is a virtue, and returning back to the truth is better than wallowing in falsehood, as they say. خير من التمادي في الباطل. So the second affair here is the pure following of the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and returning back to that in disputes and affairs and judgments are made therein. The third defining aspect of the Sunnah of the Prophet, of the Salafi methodology, اقتفاء آثار السلف من الصحابة والتابعين وأتباعهم. following the narrations of the Salaf and the companions and the Tabi'een. So point one, the defining aspect was Tawheed, sincerity to Allah. Point two, following the Sunnah, the Prophet ﷺ. And point three, the Salaf, the narrations of the Salaf. This is the third defining aspect of the Salafi methodology, once again proven by ayat of the Quran, where Allah said, وَمَنْ يُشَاقِقِ الرَّسُولَ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا تَبَيَّنَ لَهُ الْهُدَى وَيَتَّبِعْ غَيْرَ سَبِيلِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ نُوَلِّهِ مَا تَوَلَّى وَنُصْلِهِ جَهَنَّمَ وَسَاءَتْ مَصِيرًا. That whomsoever opposes or contradicts or goes against the messenger after the guidance becomes clear to him, and yet he still goes against the messenger and follows a path other than the path of the mu'mineen. وَيَتَّبِعْ غَيْرَ سَبِيلِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Al-mu'mineen in this ayah, it is talking about the Sahaba, the Salaf. Whomsoever follows a path other than the path of the companions, نُوَلِّهِ مَا تَوَلَّى وَنُصْلِهِ جَهَنَّمَ. Then he will be given what he goes upon, and he will be left upon that and enter into hellfire. وَسَاءَتْ مَصِيرًا. And how evil an abode that is. So that ayah makes it very clear. If you oppose the way of the Salaf after it becomes clear to you, after the evidences, the position, the Salafi methodology becomes clear to you, yet you still oppose and you still insist that it's okay and there's this and there's that, and you refuse to accept the way of the Salaf, then that is the severe warning mentioned against the one who does that. وَالنَّبِيُّ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم وَصَّى بِذَلِكَ. And the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam advised us with that too. He said, فَعَلَيْكُمْ بِسُنَّتِي وَسُنَّةِ الْخُلَفَاءِ الرَّاشِدِينَ الْمَهْدِيِّينَ مِنْ بَعْدِي عَضُّوا عَلَيْهَا بِالنَّوَاجِذِ وَإِيَّاكُمْ وَمُحْدَثَاتِ الْأُمُورِ. Where the Messenger said, upon you is to cling to my sunnah and the sunnah of the rightly guided caliphs. Bite onto it with your molar teeth and be warned from the newly invented matters. So that is very clear in following the way of the Sahaba, following the way of the Salaf, and that is a defining characteristic of the Salafi methodology, as opposed to all these other methodologies who clearly have a deficiency in that regard. They clearly have a deficiency in the regard of following the Sunnah or following the methodology of the Salaf in the religion. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, he mentioned there is no doubt أن خير قرون هذه الأمة في الأعمال والأقوال والاعتقاد وغيرها من كل فضيلة أن خيرها القرن الأول ثم الذين يلونهم. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah says there is no doubt that the best of all of the generations of this ummah, in their actions and their statements and their belief, and in other than that, in every virtuous affair, the best of this ummah in every affair are the first generation, the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, then those who follow them after that. So that is the third. The first three characteristics are very clear then. It is about sincerity to Allah, Tawheed, about following the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and about following the Sahaba, the Salaf, that methodology and manhaj. The fourth defining characteristic of Salafiyya, الثبات والرسوخ, that Ahlul Sunnah, the Salafiyun, are grounded in this methodology. As opposed to the people of innovation, when you question them on their methodology, they are here and there. Ahlul Sunnah, we understand what the methodology is. It is a grounded affair. Clear-cut evidences, Quran, Sunnah, Sahaba, Salaf, grounded and firm. Whereas the people of innovation, when you start questioning them, they start to shake here and shake there. They do not understand exactly how to explain and what to provide and what the grounding is, because they follow their imams and they follow their people. One imam tells them one thing, another one tells them another thing. Ahlul Sunnah grounded upon that basis without any shaking or movement. فلا تؤثر فيه التغيرات السياسية أو الاجتماعية. So Ahlul Sunnah, our methodology is grounded. And no worldly affairs or any politics or social affairs or whatever it might be going on, that doesn't impact our methodology. It doesn't impact our way. No matter what is going on, the politics going on, the affairs going on in the world, the various things that happen, none of that affects our methodology. None of that changes our practice of our religion. None of that changes our straight path that we tread upon. So Ahlul Sunnah are grounded. They are not changed or shaken or moved by political affairs going on and other worldly matters going on. لأن مبناه على العلم والوحي. Because our methodology, it is built upon knowledge and the revelation. Knowledge and the revelation. And so no matter what occurs in politics and world affairs, that doesn't change our knowledge and the revelation that came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. والذي يثمر اليقين والثبات والقوة في أخذ الدين. So that knowledge and that revelation, the fruits of that, it produces certainty in our minds, and it gives us that grounding and strength in taking our religion, learning our religion. And we're not affected by worldly matters and what the kuffar are doing here, what the kuffar are doing there. That doesn't change our methodology, doesn't change our knowledge, doesn't change what's in the Quran and the Sunnah. And that is mentioned or highlighted in the Quran where Allah said, قُلْ هَذِهِ سَبِيلِي أَدْعُو إِلَى اللَّهِ عَلَى بَصِيرَةٍ أَنَا وَمَنِ اتَّبَعَنِي وَسُبْحَانَ اللَّهِ وَمَا أَنَا مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. That say, this is my straight path. This is my path, and I call to Allah. This is my path, I call to Allah upon insight and knowledge. Upon insight and knowledge I call to Allah, I and those who follow me. And glorified be Allah, free of deficiencies, and I am not from the polytheists. So here, al-basira is al-ilm wal-yaqeen, that I call to Allah upon this path, upon insight, meaning upon knowledge and certainty. Upon knowledge and certainty. So then Shaykh Abdullah Dhafiri mentions very important. He says, فَهَذَا الْمَنْهَجْ الرَّبَّانِ لا يؤثر فيه تغير الأزمان والأحوال. So this nurturing methodology, grounded methodology, is not affected by the change in times, what is going on in the world, al-ahwal, different things happening in the world, different issues going on, changes in politics and dynamics, whatever is happening, it doesn't change our methodology, doesn't affect our methodology. بل هو ثابت راسخ رسوخ الجبال. This methodology is fixed and grounded like the mountains are grounded. And so that's important to remember, because Al-Ikhwan al-Muslimin and their likes, everything changes in accordance to worldly affairs. Whatever is happening, the politics going on, the issues going on, then their methodology adapts along with that. Whatever the world affair is, that's their da'wah for those 2 or 3 years. After that, some other politics begins, some other issue begins in world affairs, their da'wah becomes that. Ahlul Sunnah, our da'wah is one, regardless of the politics and things that are occurring. And we know this is the world. This is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed the affairs. Changes occur, the world changes, different things happen, calamities befall. We know all of this is from the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we do not become influenced and affected and dragged away by some worldly affair that occurs. Worldly affairs and politics and other things, they have happened in the past, they are happening now, and they will continue to happen till the day of judgment. It doesn't change our methodology of focusing on beneficial knowledge, focusing on studying, focusing on the Quran and the Sunnah, focusing on this methodology of the Salaf, not becoming dragged away like the Ikhwanis onto those politics day and night. So the fourth affair, our methodology is grounded and firm, not affected by politics and other issues. The fifth affair, al-wasatiyya wal-i'tidal. That the defining characteristic of Salafiyya, the fifth one, is that it is a balanced methodology. It is a balanced methodology. فهو كما أسلفنا منهج رباني. So just like it was mentioned before, this methodology is a nurturing methodology, a grounded methodology. فالمنهج السلفي هو الإسلام. The Salafi methodology, it is Islam. It is Islam, just like Imam al-Barbahari said at the beginning of Sharh al-Sunnah. He mentioned the Sunnah is Islam and Islam is the Sunnah. This methodology is Islam. Islam is this methodology. It's not like Salafiyya is something different. Salafiyya is Islam. The methodology of Ahlul Sunnah is Islam. لأنه منهج يعتمد على قال الله قال رسوله. Because this is a methodology that relies upon, it is based upon what Allah said and what His Messenger said. وليس على عقول الرجال وآرائهم. This is not a methodology based upon the intellects of man or their opinions. It's not a methodology about or returning to the intellect of people and their opinions. Rather, it is a methodology of the Quran and the Sunnah and the Salaf, not the opinion of this person and his intellect. وَلَا عَلَى الْأَهْوَاءِ وَالْأَذْوَاقِ. Neither upon the desires and inclinations of people. وَلَا يَأْخُذُ الْإِحْكَامِ مِنَ الْعَوَاطِفِ وَالْحَمَاسِ. And you don't take the rulings based upon your personal emotional positions on things, not because of your personal issues or emotional attachment to something or reasoning. It's not upon that you make the rulings. بل هو منهج حكيم. Rather, this is a wise methodology upon understanding. يتقيد بالنصوص الشرعية. This methodology is restricted upon within the bounds of the Islamic texts. Allah said in the Quran, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. And likewise we made you a middle nation upon that middle path, أي عَدْلًا خِيَارًا. That you are upon that balanced and just way, upon the correct manner. والواقع يشهد بذلك. فما من فرقة سلكت مسلكا غير المنهج السلفي إلا وقعت في الإفراط أو التفريط أو في التساهل أو التشدد. So this is something which we can see in real life. Because there is not a sect from among them who tread upon a methodology other than Salafiyya, except that you see them either falling into shortcoming or exaggeration. Either shortcoming, deficiency, or excess and exaggeration. Or they are too easy on the affairs, or they are too strict on the affairs. Whereas Ahlul Sunnah are upon that balanced methodology. وأما منهج السلف فهو منهج وسط في كل باب من أبواب الدين. It is the middle methodology, balanced in every aspect of the religion. وهو منهج يساير الفطرة التي جبل الله الناس عليها. So this methodology, it matches along with the natural state of a person, the innate nature that Allah made as that innate nature within us. Allah made us upon that natural disposition, and this methodology is along with that and in conformity and harmony with that. As-sadisa, the sixth affair that distinguishes the Salafi methodology, ash-shumuliyah, the comprehensive nature of it. The comprehensive, inclusive nature of it. فهو منهج يربي على العقيدة الصحيحة وعلى عبادة الله بإخلاص لله واتباع للرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى معاملات مبنية على تحقيق المصالح ودرء المفاسد. So this methodology incorporates and is comprehensive upon all the affairs of Aqidah, upon worshipping Allah on sincerity, upon following the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, upon having interactions and dealings that are based upon actualizing the benefits and removing the harms. And that is a principle in the religion, to actualize the benefits and to remove the harms. And they have various principles connected to this issue and around this issue. Like they say, for example, درء المفاسد مقدم على جلب المصالح. For example, keeping away a harm is given priority over bringing a benefit or a good. One of the examples of that is the Kaaba. The Kaaba, it was originally built as a rectangle shape by Ibrahim alayhi salam, not as the square shape you see now. Now you see the square shape, and then on one side there's that semicircle thing. That's where the Kaaba used to go up to that semicircle. It was a rectangle shape. That's why when you do tawaf, you can't go inside, you have to go outside that semicircle. You can't do tawaf right inside on that side of the wall of the Kaaba. That's in the Kaaba. Have to go outside that semicircle thing. So originally the Kaaba was like a rectangle. The Prophet ﷺ wanted to bring the Kaaba down and rebuild it on the original foundations of Ibrahim in that rectangle shape. But he didn't. And he explained to Aisha radiallahu anha why not. He said, was it not for your people? Was it not for your people? Then I would have done that. Meaning, the people, meaning, even now it's clear to understand, if the messenger tore down the Kaaba, to rebuild it of course, but if he tore down the Kaaba brick by brick, took it all down, the people would say, what is he doing? Tearing down the house of Allah. The fitna that this would create is greater than bringing about that good. It's a good to build the Kaaba back on the original foundation where it should be. That's a good thing, that's a maslahah. But the mafsada is greater. Now imagine if they did it. If Saudi Arabia brought the bulldozers in They brought the bulldozers in and knocked down the Kaaba. They would be making takfir of them from every corner of the world. The Muslims from every corner of the world would say, that's it, we knew it. We knew they were kuffar all along. We knew they were disbelievers, infidels, kuffar, apostates. We knew it. Look at them. Look at the live feed from the Kaaba, bulldozers knocking down the Kaaba. The corruption that it would create, the fitna, is far greater than getting the Kaaba back on the original foundation. So they have a principle. When the fitna is going to be that much, then you forfeit that maslahah. You say, okay, we'll leave that aside because the amount of harm that is going to happen is just too great, greater than getting that maslahah. So that's an example of it. That's an example. And let alone now, even the Prophet ﷺ was saying that then. And if I knock it down, then the people might start saying, what's going on? Knocking down the house of Allah. The mafsada would be greater than the maslahah. And these kinds of things, this is what scholars weigh up. This is not something easy. That you and I can just sit here and say, okay, let's have a look, let's examine the situation. Look at that side, look at that side. Yes, definitely here the maslahah is bigger. Mafsada smaller, do it. Or look at the situation, yeah, this one the mafsada is bigger, leave it. So don't do the maslahah because the mafsada is too big. That's not something simple. You can just sit there, look at the case and make your decision. These kinds of, especially when they are bigger issues, we're not talking about a personal issue to you, but bigger issues that affect people and affect communities or even affect the ummah as a whole, then it's not you or I who is going to sit here and make the decision on behalf of the ummah that this is a maslahah, this is a mafsada. These kinds of things go back to the scholars. The scholars are the ones who are going to judge what is the maslahah, what is the mafsada. If it is an affair that affects a great number of people, maybe even the whole ummah. That's why they say when it comes to a nazila, that is only for the scholars to talk and for the scholars to make the judgments on the affairs. Because it is not you or I who is going to be able to judge, this is good for the people, we need to do this. That is not good for the people, we can't do that. This is for the scholars when it comes to great affairs. So that is not easy. People, they get these principles from usul al-fiqh. Take the lesser of the two evils. Principle of mafsada, maslahah. They take these principles and implement them left, right, center, and they have no idea whether these are being implemented properly or not. Lesser of the two evils, how often do you hear it from people? And they don't even know how they are implementing this principle. There are rules in usul al-fiqh as to how the principle of lesser of the two evils is implemented. Some of the basic aspects of it are that you have to be in a situation whereby it is a necessity for you to do one of the two things. You are in a situation now, you have no choice but to do one of the two. That's the first thing. Many people don't even get to that situation. They are here, and if they get to this location, now they are stuck. They can't go back. They have to either do that or do that. And both of those are evils. But they're here now. There's no way back. So now they got to do one of the two. But if you're here and you're not stuck yet, you can go this way, you can go this way, you can go multiple ways yet. Then you can't from here say, lesser of the two evils, and then go into the situation where now you are stuck and you have to do one of the two evils and say, well, it's okay, lesser of the two evils. Wrong. Usul al-fiqh, it tells you if you're in a situation where those two are not necessitated yet, then you can't use the principle. Because you're not in a situation where you have to do one of the two evils. You're here, you can go this way, you can go this way. But if you happen to find yourself for some reason here, now you have no choice. Now it comes into lesser of the two evils. Even then, to make the judgment, what is the lesser of the two evils? That requires knowledge. Not just your judgment, well, that one looks a bit bad, but that one looks worse. Not just your judgment you make. This requires knowledge. This requires going back to the people of knowledge, going back to the scholars. That's why it's so important, and the Salafi scholars, they emphasize this so much. Returning to the people of knowledge, returning to the scholars. When the people don't do that, that's where the problems begin. And this is a defining characteristic too. All of these other groups, they have no such concept of returning to the scholars. They return to their imams, blind following. But as for returning to the people of knowledge, that is something important. The seventh affair, أنه منهج قائم على تحقيق الولاء والبراء وعلى الحب في الله والبغض في الله. That this is a methodology that is built upon actualizing loving and hating for the sake of Allah, enmity and allegiance for the sake of Allah. And you hear that all the time, but it's another one of those issues where people say it, but the application of it isn't really there. As Shaykh Al-Fawzan said, the majority of people these days, he said, عامة الناس, the masses of the people these days, their loving and hating is based upon masalih dunyawiyya, on worldly affairs. Their loving and hating of people is not based upon religion, upon the sake of Allah. It's for other personal gains and personal benefits. Stay good with this guy because you'll be able to get something out of him, or he'll help you with something. Don't like that guy because he did something to you personally. It's all about these affairs. As Shaykh Al-Fawzan said, the majority of people these days, their allegiances with others are based upon these masalih, worldly benefits and gains and personal gains, not upon loving and hating for the sake of Allah. If you genuinely and truly implement that, loving and hating for the sake of Allah, then that will be a love and hate that is based upon implementation of the Quran and the Sunnah. Not that you love somebody even though you know they are wrong and they are opposing something, but you love them and have a problem with the one who is upon the truth, then that is not loving and hating for the sake of Allah. So that's the seventh affair here, a distinguishing characteristic, which is enmity and allegiance for the sake of Allah, loving and hating for the sake of Allah. على مقتضى العقيدة, upon what our aqidah necessitates. وهذه الخاصية هي نتيجة التحاكم إلى القرآن والسنة. And this particular characteristic, it is the consequence of returning back to the Quran and the Sunnah for judgment. If you go back to the Quran and the Sunnah for judgment in all your affairs, then you are going to have to be, or you will be upon enmity and allegiance for the sake of Allah. If you are with the ones who are then upon the truth from the Quran and the Sunnah, and you are not with the ones who oppose the Quran and the Sunnah, if you make your judgments back to the religion, back to the Quran and the Sunnah, then that is a means of having that love and hatred and allegiance and enmity for the sake of Allah. But as for the one who does not do that, all of their arguments are based upon personal intellect or rationale or other affairs, and your friendships and allegiances are based upon who you like and who you don't, then it's not going to end up in the manner that a Salafiyya requires it to be. So we'll have to stop on that today. Prayer is coming in. There's a few more defining characteristics which we'll carry on with from next time, inshallah ta'ala. And that's almost the end of this particular chapter. Then we'll be able to go on to the next chapter, which is about the innocence of the Salafi methodology from those who claim it, but they are not from it. Those who claim to be upon Salafiyya, but in reality they are not upon Salafiyya.